And she froze. Antonio, good to see you. Looks like Daniel.
Are we live? Good to see you too, Brad.
The virtual book tour is the best ever.
You know, this is going to be one of my questions later. We're going to talk about technology, and clearly technology is biting us here before we begin. We were expecting Danielle Bartlett to introduce BradTaylor and Antonio Mora, who is the person speaking here. Maybe she'll join us in a second, and we can have her do that. But if not, we'll get started here. I think everybody knows Brad, of course. That's why you're all here. I'm a longtime television news anchor, and you probably may have seen me on Good Morning America. I was the news anchor there for many years, and that's really all you need to know about me, to tell you the truth. I'd much rather talk about Brad. I am very excited. I was very excited when Brad asked me to do this event tonight in this, under these very unusual circumstances, because I've been a big fan of his books pretty much from the beginning. Oh, there's Danielle. Danielle, would you like to say something?
Nice. Sorry, guys.
We sort of introduced ourselves, but if you want to go ahead.
I know you did a great job. I mean, that's what you do. So, I mean, I'm not surprised. But I was just going to introduce both of you. We're here tonight to launch American Traitor, which you can't see, but is right here is Brad's new book. We're so excited. Goes on sale today. Antonio and Brad are here to discuss the book and Brad's series. And as if you may not know, but I'm sure you do if you're here, Brad is was a lieutenant colonel and 21-year veteran of the U.S. Army and Special Forces, including 8 years with the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, Delta, popularly known as Delta Force. Taylor retired in 2010 after serving more than 2 decades and participating in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom, as well as classified operations around the globe, which he will not talk about. His final military post is an assistant professor of military science at the Citadel, and all of his previous 14 Pike Logan thrillers have been New York Times bestsellers. Fingers crossed. American Traitor is the 15th book in the series, and when he's not writing, he serves as a security consultant on asymmetrical threats for various agencies, and he lives in Charleston with his beautiful wife and 2 daughters. And then Antonio Mora, thank you so much for joining us tonight and interviewing Brad about this new book. We know you've been a big fan of his for a long time. Antonio is a multiple Emmy award-winning journalist who's best known nationally for his years as a news anchor on Good Morning America. He's a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He is specialized in international news, which is great because Brad's books are all about international news. Anchoring International News Hour for Al Jazeera America, and writing a series of columns on international affairs for The Hill and The Daily Beast. And he is currently the editor-in-chief of 2 internet news organizations. One is newsandnews.com, and the other is The Juice News. He's also a lecturer at the University of Miami. And before becoming a journalist, he practiced law in New York, and he graduated from Harvard Law School and the University. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to say that one. I did not do Spanish.
Universidad Católica Andrés Bello in Venezuela.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to you. You are the pro at this, and I'm so excited to hear the conversation between you two about American Traitor.
And I am very excited about it. And I do want to start with a warning to Brad's fans that you do not want to start reading this book late at night if you want to go to bed at a reasonable hour, because you will stay up until, who knows, he owes me a few hours of sleep over the past couple of weeks. But the book is terrific. It's an incredible page turner, as all of his books are. One of the reasons I became a big fan is the topics that Brad addresses. He almost always deals with interesting international affairs, and many times he's been prescient. He's really gotten on top of the news before the news has happened, really addressed stories that have become news even more so after he's written the books. The first time Brad and I the first time I interviewed Brad was back in 2013 when Tom Clancy died, and we were doing a segment about Clancy and his influence on novelists in the genre, and I was already a big fan of Brad's at that point, and I suggested to my bookers, I said, you got to call this guy because he's great. And it was great that Brad agreed to do that, and I've talked to him a few times since, and it's great to do this again. And as I was saying, he addresses these international affairs topics, and many times he is ahead of the news, and I think that may well be the case here. Because Brad, I assume you started writing this book well over a year ago, before China had become such a major topic in the news.
Yeah, actually, this thing's been a slow burn, to be honest with you. I was doing research in Lesotho, Africa for Operator Down, which is 3 books ago. And that was about a coup. And so I had to see the parliamentary buildings. I had to see the government facilities. I had to see the police stations and that kind of stuff in this small country of Lesotho. And so I'm driving around doing all that, doing a research for that specific book. And all the parliament buildings were brand new. I mean, they were really nice, and they were being constructed as I was there. And outside of the buildings was a bunch of Chinese lettering, which I assumed said something like, be sure you wear a hard hat if you come in here or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I asked the guy I was with, I was like, what's the Chinese lettering for in Lesotho, Africa, this very small country? And they said, China's building all these for us. And I said, what are they doing that for? And they said, well, they just want to be nice. And I was like, I'm not so sure they're trying to be nice. They want something out of this. It didn't factor into my book at all at that time for Operator Down, but it stuck in the back of my head. And it was my first real world inroad into the Belt and Road Initiative that China's doing right now.
Which is something that a lot of people really don't know about, is just to what extent China is really spreading its influence around the world greatly in third world countries or developing countries, and what kind of power that could give China in the long run.
Well, it does give them an enormous amount of power. People don't see that I think there's 15 countries left that recognize Taiwan as an independent country. And China, it's kind of a hybrid war. It's gray war. They don't want to shoot bullets at it, but they go into those countries and they give them new ports. They give them new parliament buildings. They give them whatever they're going to give them. And in return, they then say, I don't recognize Taiwan anymore. I mean, it's insidious. The NBA, has a ton of money inside China. And one guy says, I support Hong Kong. The NBA, China says, you're not going to play inside China anymore. And the NBA capitulates to him. I mean, actually, Top Gun's coming out, the new Top Gun. And, Tom Cruise puts on his iconic jacket, the leather jacket with all the flags on it. Well, there's something different on this new jacket. The Taiwanese flag is no longer there. And it's because they want to sell that stuff into China. It's insidious, but it's true.
Right. And before we go on in China, I forgot to mention the structure of what we're going to do here tonight. We're going to talk for about an hour. The plan is for me to ask Brad questions for about 45 minutes and then open it to some questions that you guys can post on the chat. I will, however, glance occasionally over at the chat and see if there's something that we're talking about that one of you, if you have something that you particularly want me to address, I will get in there and bring it up with Brad. So that's the plan. We're probably going to talk about international affairs that he addresses in the book for about a third of the conversation. Another third will probably be about the book itself. I'll avoid spoilers. And the final third, I want to talk to him about his process as a writer and what he does. So let's continue though on China and that, where I'm sure you started writing this before. I guess things had gotten hot in Hong Kong probably while you were writing this, but Taiwan has become a bigger issue certainly since you wrote this. Probably since you had already put this away. And put it in the publisher's hands. How serious is what's going on now, aside from that broader influence where China is really putting its hooks into developing world countries, really in some incredible ways. You mentioned what was happening in Lesotho, but in Venezuela, for example, with the oil industry, how much of Venezuela's oil production has been, in fact, pledged to China because of loans from China. So China is projecting this, soft and not so soft power around the world. But let's talk more, kind of the hotter danger, or even the gray war that you've referred to, specifically when it comes to Taiwan.
Well, Taiwan they're the thorn in China's side, because every country has, 12 nautical miles of influence outside their coast. And they've been building the Spratly Islands up. They say those are our islands. Nobody else, they call it the 9-dash line. Nobody, even the UN has said this is ridiculous. That's not a real thing. You can't do it. China says it is. They can't have that 9-dash line with Taiwan in the scope of things. We do what we call freedom of navigation exercise, FONOPS, they call it, where we go through the Taiwanese Strait, because Taiwan is a separate country from China as far as we're concerned. And they can't do anything in the South China Sea with Taiwan being there. That is their giant thorn in their side. They cannot control anything else as long as Taiwan exists. And the president of China, who's now, basically become a dictator for life, has said, this is not going to be a generational issue. I'm not turning this over to the next generation. We are going to absorb Taiwan. By hook or by crook, one way or the other, we're going to do it.
Well, and hook or by crook is really how they're trying to do it, because
right.
They certainly are trying to avoid a hot war, but they've got a lot of tricks up their sleeve.
Oh yeah, if there's one thing that the world has learned, is that if you allow America to build up combat power anywhere in the world since Desert Storm, you're going to lose. You cannot defeat the United States military head on head. You just can't do it. You have to do it by some other means. And that's what they're looking at right now. The United Front Works Department is a section of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. It's in America. It's in everywhere. It's in all universities. And it's all over Taiwan. And they're using information warfare. In 1998, there was actually a paper written, I was at Naval Postgraduate School, called Unrestricted Warfare, written by 2 colonels in the PLA. And it was how to defeat America without shooting bullets. And it's a basic blueprint. They've been doing it forever, and they're doing it now. They're trying to sway Taiwan into, they co-opt the youngsters that come out. Anybody in Taiwan, they can go to the Chinese mainland and do camps and things like that. And they're trying to co-opt them all. And it's hard for Taiwan to compete with that, because Taiwan's economy is tied to China. I mean, when I was over there doing the research, they had shut down all tourism to Taiwan from China. The president of Taiwan had said something, and the president of China got mad about that and said, nobody's ever going to Taiwan again. Boom. And that just devastated their economy. They have huge levers over that. They don't need to shoot a bullet on it. They use everything they have.
On the other hand, though, has democracy and an anti-China, anti-PRC, anti-People's Republic of China, hasn't that feeling, and that the anti, hey, yeah, we have to remain independent, that philosophy, that position, actually taken stronger hold inside Taiwan over the past couple of years?
It absolutely,
especially and especially because of Hong Kong.
Absolutely. For the longest time, Taiwan used to look at itself as being Chinese. They, from 1949, they were China. They were the legitimate control of China. We even said that the legitimate control of China is in Taiwan. Since that time, as things have progressed, the people in Taiwan now consider themselves Taiwanese versus Chinese. I'm not Chinese. And actually it's not in the book, but it's really fascinating, is when the Kuomintang left China in 1949, when Chiang Kai-shek went to Taiwan, there were tiny Taiwanese people there that were like, hey, we're Taiwanese. You're not Taiwanese. And they generally assimilated into that. And now they all believe that they're more Taiwanese than they are Chinese. There's still a huge segment that wants to, the Kuomintang specifically wants to, get back with China. Right. But when they saw what happened with Hong Kong with the so-called one state, two systems thing that didn't pan out, and Taiwan, that's why the president of Taiwan won such a resounding victory. It was like, that ain't happening. We're not going back.
Which for a while there was some question as to whether that would happen, as to how big a victory she'd have, and
right.
In fact she really walked away with it quite easily. But again, China does have tremendous power to bear, not only subtly through social media, through using organizations in Taiwan, co-opting people inside Taiwan, but also because, and this is something that in the United States a lot of people aren't aware of, is that China has the largest intelligence operation in the world.
They absolutely do. The Ministry of State Security, which is, I had to read like 5 books on it. You've never even heard of them. I mean, everybody's heard of the KGB. Everybody knows about the guy who gets poisoned with plutonium, or the Novichok killings. That KGB is in every movie. The Ministry of State Security, nobody's ever heard of. And they are everywhere. I mean, they are all over the place. And they're so insidious that, if you looked at something in the CIA, you'd say, that guy's in the CIA and he's doing ABCD. It doesn't work that way with China. There's a blending in of whether does that guy really work for the MSS, or has he just been co-opted by the MSS? I mean, they just had a guy arrested in New York City, a New York City Police Department guy, a cop, was getting paid by the MSS to keep tabs on Tibetan refugees in New York City. And they do that everywhere. They find somebody in a laundromat. They find somebody in a university. They find somebody all over the place, and they co-opt them. And it's really hard to figure out whether this is some MSS super agent, or did he just pay this guy? And
it does seem like we see, if you follow the news, it seems like every few weeks there's some Chinese agent or someone accused of being a Chinese agent in the United States, where a case, somebody's arrested, and how pervasive is their presence in the United States?
Oh, it's huge. The problem we have is that money talks. And so, for instance, in our universities, they have a Chinese cultural system that they've said, we want to start these Chinese cultural systems inside the university system. So University of Texas, you name it, Harvard, wherever it is, we're going to give you bazillions of dollars to build this cultural system, and the university is not going to turn that down. Well, the next thing you know is they're co-opting professors, they're co-opting other people to do whatever they want them to do. They just had a guy from Harvard who was flying back to China with a bunch of biotech stuff. And they arrested him, and he was doing it for the MSS. And in my book, actually, because truth is definitely stranger than fiction, there was a guy, Chinese guy in Australia, who was a used car salesman, ran for parliament, won the seat into parliament, and was getting enormous amount of pressure. Eventually cracked and told their version of the CIA in Australia, "Hey, the MSS paid me to do this, and I won. And now they're really scaring me because they want me to do all kinds of stuff." And 3 days later, he was found dead in a hotel room. And to this day, the method of homicide is not determined.
And there have been all sorts of other issues with China and Australia. That's one of the things you raise in the book as well, is just how pervasive China's influence in Australia is. But let's go back to something you raised about the influence that China has on American corporations. And also something you raise in the book is the big tech, or at least in this case maybe it was a smaller tech company helping the Chinese. But that a lot of these companies, and I wouldn't put it all on big tech, but it is certainly
I would
the most high profile and maybe the most important part of all this is how they have been, to some extent, how they have treated China with kid gloves, because China is such a massive market that the good old profit motive here. Yeah,
and that's the problem that people talk about China. Every company in China, by their own constitution, has to support the PLA, has to support the PRC. If you're a company in China, whatever you do has to, if they want it, they get it. And that's not like America. America's a capitalist society, and so there's one company competing against another company and trying to do something. And we have our own innate sense of morality which is just twisted when it comes to China. We had a thing called Project Maven, which is artificial intelligence by the Department of Defense, which we were just doing research on artificial intelligence. And just as a side note, most people look at Department of Defense and say, I'm going to go out and kill a bunch of people. No, most of the things you use in your house are from the Department of Defense. Microwave oven is because of microwave research they did in the Department of Defense. I mean, everything comes out of the Department of Defense. The moon landings gave us chicken McNuggets, for God's sake. That's all Department of Defense stuff. And when Project Maven came out, they were doing artificial intelligence. And all the people in Google said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to pay these guys to kill people around the world, that's not what the project was about. And they quit. Google would no longer do it. Other big companies wouldn't do it. Well, they sure as heck did it over in China. China, they sell whatever they wanted to China. Everything they did, facial recognition. The Uyghurs right now are getting, thrown into camps with facial recognition technology developed by Google.
The Uyghurs are a Muslim minority in Western China that are being oppressed, and some are calling camps that they have been put in concentration camps, or certainly re-education camps, to put it mildly.
Almost.
But
Google's the one paying for all that, and they're like, "I'll sell all that stuff to China," and then people sleep well at night saying, "I didn't help that dastardly Department of Defense of America, but I'll sell that stuff to China."
Right, and artificial intelligence. I tell people they should take. There's a great 60 Minutes piece about Chinese efforts on artificial intelligence a while back that I'm sure is online somewhere. But that is something that's also a big concern here, is that they are really they have thrown far more resources, at least
they have
than I think the United States has at this, and they may be ahead of the U.S.
Yeah, they've actually they basically put out a white paper saying we're going to be the leader of artificial intelligence by 2035. And they have put enormous efforts against it. And we have the technology to compete with them, but we can't compete with them when they steal our technology and then we refuse to actually do the technology.
And how much of that stealing is going on? We've heard about industrial espionage and all that, and we've obviously just talked about how the NSS is present in the United States. How bad is how successful are they being in hacking us?
It's very successful, and it's very huge because they can replicate what we do. So they can steal it from us in universities and things like that. They've huge inroads in universities to get. All it takes is a bit of code, a bit of this. People look at, just speaking of espionage writ large, people look at, this guy's going to get the big golden egg about, solving this problem. That's not how espionage works. It's bits and pieces. I get this bit, and I get that bit, and I get this bit, and I get that bit. Journalism is the same way. I don't know how many journalist stories I've seen where you talk to one guy and he gave you one little bit, and you talk to another guy, he gave you another bit, and then when you see the story come out, you're like, holy moly, they got the whole damn thing.
Right.
That's what espionage is. And they don't need to, go in and get the golden egg. They just need bits and pieces.
Right.
And they do it over and over and over again, coupled with the fact that their companies in China, which are very good companies. I did a lot of research on it. They're really not stupid companies. When they all get together and start, trying to design this stuff, and it's all based on the PRC, you're going to do this for us. They're really doing well. There's a good shot at it. They're going to be the champions.
Another big topic that is integral to the story is that you go into deepfake videos, which again is a story that I think is just not getting enough attention in this country. Because these are for those who don't know. I suspect that most people who are watching this are people who care about the news and probably are aware of these things. But deepfake videos are highly sophisticated videos that are made to where they make a person look like they're saying or doing something that they never did. And the technology, again, it's something that the Chinese are moving forward on. And I wrote an editorial about this a couple of years back. The thought of what could happen, if a really effective deepfake video was made of a presidential candidate saying something outrageous just before the election, so that there wasn't enough time to disprove the deep fake, or that you had, you know, a deep fake video of Wolf Blitzer saying, you know, something crazy that would cause a panic, that managed, and they get it out there on social media. I mean, the danger is, we're not talking now about what could happen in China. We're talking about, you know, this is just what could happen in the United States with a deep fake, with you know, malicious deep fake videos.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where you can't determine. You know, people always say, you know, what do my eyes see? What I look at? That's what's true. Well, now you don't know if that's true or not. And there's a flip side to that. Actually, the deepfake videos actually came out, you know, the porn industry, believe it or not. You know, somebody put Scarlett Johansson's face on somebody in a porn video, and that was really crude. And they've taken it since then, and now you have to get down to ones and zeros to figure out, is that a fake video or is it not a fake video? And by the time you get down to ones and zeros, that lie's traveled around the world. It's out there. But there's a flip side to it. Now, with deepfake videos, and everybody knows there's such a thing as deepfake video, there's a thing known as the liar's dividend. So when a politician actually does say something that I'd like to buy you off, and I'm going to do this and do that, and the video comes out and somebody's surreptitiously taking a video of this guy, he now says, that's a deepfake video. Wasn't me. I didn't do that. And now the liar's dividend is, what do I believe? He's saying fake.
Yeah, it'll turn us all in. You know, it won't be enough to be a doubting Thomas, because we're not going to be able to believe our eyes and ears in on both sides of the equation, which is worrisome. And the U.S. the Defense Department is putting in some pretty substantial resources into detection methods.
They are. Absolutely. DARPA is working right now. There are several different programs that are designed. They're trying to figure out, how can we look at a video and immediately say that's a deep fake? And there's a lot of ways to do it, because when you do an actual deep fake, there are the ones and zeros, and you do my face. I'm looking at my face right now. There are ways to make, you can tell that my ears don't match up, my eyeballs don't match up, my things don't match up, and you can tell immediately that that's a deep fake using the algorithms that they have, but you can't tell just by looking at it.
Right. Yeah, no, it's tough. You know, moving on to some of the other, I'm seeing some questions coming in, and I will try to get to those. But let's start talking a little bit more about the book. And I do promise, no spoilers. I will avoid them, and I will stop Brad if he manages to go in the wrong direction. But one of the things, since we're talking technology, let's go there first. Is, you know, how much of this technology is really there? And in one case, you address the Internet of Things, and somehow they manage to use the Internet of Things and basically hack into, I won't give much away, but hack into something by using household appliances.
Now, I'll give it away, because that's absolutely true. The one of the hardest things I did when I first started writing, way back when, I couldn't give a lot of technology up because it's classified. I know it's classified, and I can't give it up. And so I spent a lot of time researching what criminals are doing. And believe it or not, criminals are doing exactly what the CIA is doing. So when a criminal figures out some kind of threat vector that he can use, the CIA's figured it out too. And so that's what I started doing, was looking at crime stuff. And and what he's referring to right now is there's a iRoomba as a vacuum cleaner that runs around your house. And it uses artificial intelligence. It's got to figure out where the chairs are. It's got to figure out where the couch is. It's got to figure out what all the stuff is. So the first time it vacuums your house, it bumps into everything and takes 3 hours. Second time, it bumps into half of that and takes an hour and a half. By 40th vacuuming, it knows what your house looks like. And then it stores that floor plan in the cloud. And if you could crack that floor plan in the cloud, you could use it to rob a house. I mean, if I wanted to rob my house, you want to go to the place that's got all the goods, so to speak. You want to go to the bedroom. You want to go to, you don't want to spend all your time in the kitchen. And I have an iRoomba, which that's how I know all this. So when I started running that thing around my house, I'm like, are you kidding me? You're giving everybody,
get the layout of the house through the.
And I thought that was perfect for an assault plan. And if somebody could get that assault, if I were to assault a house, The golden egg you want is, what does the house look like? You want to know the floor plan. You've got to know where everything is and where you want to go. I mean, in the worst case or best case. Worst case, you know nothing. Best case, I know where every room is. I know where the couch is. I know where this kitchen island is. I know where anybody can hide. And when I hit this house, I can hit it hard as I want to because I have the floor plan. And you never got the floor plan ever. And this iRoomba thing, I was like, you can get the floor plan out of that one.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And so technology is an important piece of how the task force, how your characters operate when they hit a building, or then they do, and one of the things I always wonder is, like, all that technology that you refer to in there, that is all state of the art or stuff that exists.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of times where I'll create something that doesn't exist per se, but I know for a fact it could exist. The only reason it doesn't exist is we haven't figured out a reason to do it. For instance, in Hunter Killer, we have a thing called a switchblade, which is what the Army calls a loitering munition, which is really a suicide drone. The thing flies around, and when it finds out what's going to hit, it's going to hit it. And I made what I call the nail clipper, which I pat myself on the back. Switchblade, nail clipper. Much smaller. It's built on a DJI drone, much smaller drone.
I remember, yeah.
They've been using those drones in Afghanistan and Iraq all the time. They just weren't as sophisticated as what I had in my book. Do we have one of those? No, we don't. But could we? By all means, we could. I mean, it's something.
Yeah, and so, but when they're out there, when real life operators are out there and relying on this technology, it's like, I mean, today I had my computer crashed, lost my hard drive, literally this morning. So if lives are at stake, is it more reliable than the tech that most of us are used to using?
No, I'll tell you this. And I actually had the same thing. I was doing interviews today for American Traitor, and my phone's hooked up to the internet, and I lost internet for 5 minutes right in the middle of an interview. Bam, done. So no, but most of the stuff we do in the real world, when it comes down to the crisis site, when it's time to hit the crisis site, you're not relying on technology at that point. You're relying on violence and speed of action. When it comes down to, if you lost link or whatever, and you couldn't get this, you couldn't get that, you delay a little bit. If you couldn't delay, you're going to hit that house one way or the other. And when you go in there, it's just going to happen.
And talking about the task force, this is a question I've asked you before, but I think that I'm sure it's a question that readers would have. Does something like the task force exist in real life? Is there? Well, okay, but I'm going to push you a little bit on this, because I knew that no was coming, but you're not. Other authors have written a kind of similar off the books kind of operations. Which makes me inclined, okay, unless all, you guys all have similar imaginations with things like this, but when there are, significant military contractors out there, the Defense Department does contract out certain things. So really, there's nothing like this? We
actually don't. And that's one of the biggest myths. I'm a private military contractor. I've contracted DNI. I've contracted all over the place. Wexford, you name it. I've done contracts with them. We do not, as the United States of America. Now, Russia does, like the Wagner group. They're actual, proponents of the state. They do stuff for plausible deniability so that Russia can get something done without saying they're doing it. We don't do that. The United States would never, ever, ever, ever contract out something that was a national strategic mission to some company. It just wouldn't happen. And I'll tell you why it wouldn't happen, because I was in the military, and I am a contractor now. It's because contractors, the companies all want to make money. That's their big goal. It's making money. That is what they want to do. So when you get a contract, it is specified, here's how you have to do this contract. And I don't know how many contracts I've been on where I'm like, we could do this better this way. And the contractee would say, well, they didn't pay for that. We're not doing that. And I would sit there and say, what are you talking about? This is the United States here. We're trying to do something right, aren't we? They all want to make money. And we would never, ever, ever contract out a national security situation to anybody like that. And speaking of the task force, the only reason I created the task force was because I've served in a lot of classified units, and I didn't want anybody to say that I was writing about a real unit just changing the name. So I created this unit that anybody who's served in that world would say, that thing doesn't exist. So just to make sure that nobody knew that this was true. We used to kid about it. We all wanted it because it's very hard to get anything done in the United States military. It's incredibly hard. You have to work through the intelligence, you work through the State Department. You got to work through Title 10 of the Department of Defense. You got to work through Title 50. I mean, it's just very hard to get anything done. And it was very frustrating, but there's a reason for that. It's because it's called the Constitution. And there was a reason that I understood why we had to go through it. I didn't like it, but I understood it. And we don't have anything like task force.
Well, you've led into two things I wanted to ask you about. And one, when you talked about doing things right, that the U.S. wants to do things, right. That's one of the things that in this book comes up on more than one occasion, where there is real sort of kind of internal and external along the group discussion about whether they're doing what's right.
Right.
How realistic is that in the field? Does that happen when you're out there?
Yeah, it does. I would say that's realistic. Whenever you go into combat, it's a gray world. You've been told your whole life, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not kill. And then you're given a rifle and said, go kill that guy. When you go into combat, there are things that happen that you have to make decisions on. You just have to. It's going to happen. And sometimes those decisions are right and sometimes they're not. And you're going to live with that decision for the rest of your life. I live with them. I mean, it's just something that happens. And those moral conundrums I have experienced a few times that, that's kind of realistic.
And the other thing is, and it's something that I think it's probably fair to say is cropped up in all the books, which is a bit of that tension between the operators and the controllers in DC, and or the politicians even in Washington, and we see that again in various ways in this book. How accurate is that? And I think back to the cases where Osama bin Laden had been identified way before he was before 9/11 and things like that. Is that a frustration? Is that something that does happen in the field for special operations personnel?
I'd say I may make it a little bit more harsh than it needs to be, just for poetic license. I've been in a room where we discuss things. I was up in DC, and they'd be I can't say the operation, but they were guys were yelling at each other, screaming and yelling. I want to do this. No, you're not. You're doing this. You're doing that. And I was kind of the backbencher at that. I wasn't a player. But I saw it, and that's a true thing. But I probably do it more than actually does occur for like the Bin Laden mission. That's the thing that when someone says, "Are my books realistic? Would this really happen?" It would, given the circumstances of the book. But if you really wanted to write a book about what really happens, it would be 300 pages of PowerPoints, and the guy would get on a plane and nobody would go anywhere. Which is basically what happened with bin Laden. I mean, it takes a long time to figure out that guy is the guy we want, and do we really want to invade Pakistan and that kind of stuff. It's not a quick turn like my books are. Quick turn. I'm going to go into Taiwan and start kicking ass. That doesn't happen in the real world. It takes a long time to figure out. There's all kinds of competing interests. So there's a guy we had. Well,
does it take too long?
It does, but it doesn't. And the reason I say that is there's a reason that Title 50 and Title 10, there's a reason covert action is now codified in Title 50, and it's because of Iran-Contra. I mean, there's reasons that it takes so long. It's because we gave somebody the leash, and then he went crazy with it.
Right.
And then we came back and said we've got to make some rules for this. So I understand the rules, and I didn't like them, but I certainly understand the history of them. And it does take too long. And there's been people that I could have had, I can't talk about it on an open thing, but there's people that I was like, that guy's a killer and I can get him right now. And then it would be the State Department saying the banana crop in this country is too important. If you do this, it's going to hurt the banana crop, and it would get disproved. And so that's usually what.
Yeah. So talking a little more about the book and the characters, Pike and Jennifer, developing the relationship even further. Yeah.
So I've had. In fact, I just talked to my editor the other day, and I was like, what the hell am I doing with this?
You're dragging the romance out.
Well, no, I know where I'm going to go with it. I just don't know how am I going to write about it? I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And then COVID has just destroyed everything. So I was supposed to be.
Although I gotta say that you do address COVID very, very briefly, and there's very little funny about COVID. What you did was funny with it, but I'll leave that at that. What?
So I was originally, because I usually set the books, 9 months out after I'm writing it. So the book is supposed to be set right now. And so I went to Taiwan and I went to Australia and I went traveling all over the place and did all the research, started banging that thing out. And then COVID hit. And I was like, what in the hell am I going to do with this? So I'm in Shinlan Night Market in Taipei, which is just a mass of people. And I'm like, I don't think they're doing that anymore. And so Pike does a surveillance thing in Sydney. Well, they're all locked in their houses now. There's the only people in the streets would be Pike and the guy.
Right.
And nobody can fly anywhere. And so it was hard trying to figure out what I was going to do with that.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure you'll probably have to deal with it in the next book. But one more question about characters before we talk about your writing process, and I do want to talk about the travel among the questions there. Slight spoiler, Aaron and Shoshana, who are recurring characters, are not in this. I was a little disappointed by that because
they're coming back.
I have a bit of a crush on Shoshana, which I don't know what that says about me, that I like an Israeli assassin woman, but that's a whole other issue. They'll be back. And have you thought of any spin-offs with any of the other characters, or are you going to stick to Pike and Jennifer?
Well, right now I'm sticking to Pike. That's a good question, because right now I'm sticking. I just lost my daughter's thing. Okay. I've thought about a spin-off with Aaron and Shoshana. My big concern is that I know United States Special Operations pretty well. I can write about that. I don't know the Mossad that well. I mean, I've read some books on them. I've served with them a little bit, so I can kind of fake the funk. But I don't know if I can really get in depth on that. So I'm kicking it around, but I haven't decided.
Oh, good. So let's talk about travel. You really brought some places to life. I mean, I never thought of Taipei as being a place I wanted to go visit, or Taiwan as a place I wanted to go. You kind of made me want to go visit. How much time do you spend? And did you go everywhere you write about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If there's a place that's in that book, then I've put boots on the ground in that book. So we went to. I was lucky that I had a friend of mine. Actually, my brother worked with a guy who lives in Taipei, who's an international business type guy, who's fifth generation Taiwanese. And so we hit the ground there and I hooked up with him, and he showed me, all the temples and how this works. And here's what this happens. And here's that happens. Here's the best dumplings in the place. And NP Treehouse, all that stuff he could show me. And that's what's really good is what I want to do is capture the culture of the place I'm in. Obviously Australia was a little bit easier because it's Australia, but right. There's a lot of places like in Brazil for Hunter Killer, you really got to get on the ground and talk to the people and really get an idea of what they consider is in and out, whatever it is. And then you can throw those things into books that they really understand. There's no better compliment I can get on a book when somebody says, I'm from Brazil and you really captured Salvador. I thought that was the best ever.
And actually, we have a question from one viewer on this, Carl Wallace, asking that when you visited Australia for the book, what places did you visit? I'll let you talk about them.
We went. The Australia thing is, so for the longest time, my wife is a diver, wanted to go dive the Great Barrier Reef, and so she kept saying, "Let's set a book in Australia." And I'm like, I don't have a plot for Australia. And so I started doing research on Taiwan, and it stretched into Australia. And I found that story out about the guy who got killed working for the MSS. And the more research I did in Australia, I looked at my wife and said, I think you're going to get your shot at diving the Great Barrier Reef because Australia's got a lot of stuff going on with China. And so we went all over Sydney, Cairns, Kookaburra. We went up basically on the East Coast. I was going to go to Perth because that's where the SASR, the Special Air Service Regiment, is, but it's so far away. I mean, Australia's a continent. That was like a 10-hour flight just to get there. So we basically Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, Cairns, all the way up just on the coast there, Queensland, all up and down there.
Yeah, no, it's and you bring some of the places to life in really interesting ways. So we got the travel part of it out of the conversation, but let's talk a little more about the writing process. How often do you write?
I write when there's something in my head. I used to do when I first started writing, which is damn near a decade ago now. It's kind of amazing. I would try to knock out, what they say, 2,000 words a day or 1,000 words a day, whatever it is. No matter what you do, you're going to get something out. And I found that I ended up deleting it because I didn't like it. And so what I ended up doing was just trusting myself and saying, okay, you don't have to write, every single day. And I'll go 4 days without writing. And then I'll go 4 days writing 8,000 or 10,000 words a day once it's in my head to get it out. And so I've learned just to trust myself that I'm not going to write every single day. If it's not ready, I guess the question really is, people say, when you say you're writing, they mean typing. I'm always writing.
You're always coming up with ideas and thinking about it. Right.
I'm writing and writing and writing. Then I sit down to type it out. Right. Typing to me is not writing. Writing it's going on all the time, and typing is just putting it on the page.
And how long does it take you normally if you have a normal? I mean, you seem to be cranking them out every year, and once a year. But how long is the process? If you and I'm talking about the whole process, the process from the germination of the idea to the travel to the research to whatever you're doing. How long does it take you?
Now it takes about a year, but there's always something that throws a wrench in. I was doing 2 books a year, and so I could absolutely tell you it took 6 months. I mean, from the time a publisher said, I want a title, till the time it had to get out was 6 months, which was brutal. It was absolutely crushing. Now it's about a year, but there's always been something that's screwed it up and turned it into a 6-month schedule. For instance, the next book I'm writing is on a 6-month schedule because COVID hit and it just was a mess.
Oh, good.
Where I had my knee replaced, and I was laid up, and it ends up being
one good thing to come out of COVID.
Yeah, so it's going to end up being a 6-month schedule, but it takes about a year of it takes a while for the idea to percolate of what I want to do, and then you're never sure if your editor is going to like what you're going to do. And so I sent him the framework for the next book, and he was like, "Yeah, I think that's great." And I'm like, "All right, let me start writing."
And we did have that question from Heather and Bruce Buono, and they asked if you had started writing your next book. So I suppose are you almost finished with it?
Oh no, I'm way behind. Don't tell my editor.
So how long from the time you produce, you're finished your first draft and get it in the hands of the editor? How long does it take then from that point to getting it out into the bookshelves?
About 6 months, maybe 8 months, actually. So there's a lot of steps that go along the way. So when I finished writing my what you would say is a first draft, honestly to me is probably the 7th draft. It's pretty clean. The editor will get it, and then I'll get editorial notes of how to fix this or fix that, and do that, and I'll do this. Then it goes to copy editing, and they'll try to tell me I don't know what military stuff is, which happens every single time. I think you called it the wrong thing. I'm like, why are you even talking to me? And I'll go through that, and then it goes back and forth, and then legal has to look at it and everything else, and then it goes to print. Where
do you write? Do you write at home?
I do. I don't have a writing spot. Which is kind of funny because somebody at one of the interviews was, we want to take a video of your writing location, and I'm like, well, that'd be my living room. I mean, I write wherever I am. I can write. I've written in bars and airplanes and volleyball tournaments for my daughter. I write wherever I am. I don't have a writing desk. I don't have a writing system. I don't get up and sit down. The computer I'm talking on right now is my writing computer, which goes with me everywhere. So,
do you have any help with the research and any of that, or you do it all yourself?
No, I do it all myself. I mean, I obviously have help. I have a lot of friends in the business that, for instance, if I'm doing a dive scene, I'm not a combat diver, but I have plenty of friends who are. And so when Knuckles is a SEAL, I'm not a SEAL, and he's going to do some dive stuff, I can contact them. When I'm a free fall jumper, but I'm not a tandem jumper. I've never jumped bundles, and so I did a tandem scene, and I happen to know the guy who's in charge of the entire tandem program of the United States military. He used to be in my troop, so I can contact him and say, hey, I'm writing this tandem scene. Of course, he writes back and says, as soon as I send it to him, this is completely wrong. This is all crazy talk. And he'll fix it for me. So I do have people I can talk to for specific research questions, but I've tried having people, would you research this for me? And when I get it, I end up doing all the work myself anyway. So no.
Okay. So let's look at some of these questions. Please feel free to write anything into the chat, and I'll take a look. And I know Danielle is looking around too, and she can let me know. But here you got one about China's influence, asking about what about China's influence in our politics, particularly with what we hear about the news, about the Hunter Biden news.
If you want my personal opinion, I don't do politics, first of all, but I'll tell you that I think the whole Hunter Biden thing is just blown up. They're just trying to make hay, and people do that on both sides of the aisle. I find it hard to believe that Hunter Biden has any kind of influence in China, or China has any influence on him. I don't think it's much. Probably should everybody hate me.
Yeah, there's another question here from Jessica Brandner. Do you think we do enough to prevent the MSS from infiltrating our government agencies?
No, I definitely do not. And the problem with the MSS is that they are, as I said before, insidious. So it's hard to find. I mean, when the KGB goes out and tries to recruit somebody, or the CIA for that matter, it's kind of easy to figure out that guy's CIA. He's doing this recruiting stuff. But the MSS, they are so insidious. It's somebody at the laundromat who they tell the lady at the laundromat, every time this guy comes in, I want you to tag his clothes or whatever it is. It's very insidious. And does a laundromat lady work for the MSS? Not really. I mean, she's not been trained or recruited or anything like that. She's just getting paid to do it. And that's the problem with the MSS. They're insidiously infiltrating every bit of American society. The Swalwell thing we just saw, I mean, that's a prime example of that. I mean, I'm going to find some city council guy and I'm going to start raising money for him and do this and do that. And that's how they operate.
Because that's a very long-term,
Yeah, they're looking at the long game. Make no mistake about it. They're looking at the long game. And, for every Swalwell that's out there that he's made the news, think of the thousands of people they've contacted. There's mayors across the United States of America that they've supported, and they're still supporting. He made the news because he made it to Congress. He's the winner for the MSS. But think of they probably spent 1,000 or contacted 1,000 different candidates before they got the one Swalwell. And those candidates are still out there.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. From Jack Stewart, does the COVID reference hint at the plot for the next book?
No, I hate COVID. My wife's got COVID. She's locked in a room right now. I am not doing it. I wrote The Widow's Strike. Read The Widow's Strike. There's my pandemic book.
There is some debate on the chat about who the best characters are, but some people do agree with me that they love Aaron and Shoshana. However, John K says, I've been thinking that when Pike and Jennifer retire, the task force needs to move on with Veep and Kylie Hale. What do you think about that?
Well, actually, I'm trying to figure out so Kylie and Veep got to get married too. So, I mean, the problem with writing a series is once you put something in stone, it's there forever. So when I say somebody's got blue eyes, he's got blue eyes forever. When I created Kylie and Veep, and now they're in there. Amina's another one. I mean, she exists. She's in the Pike universe, and I got to figure out what I'm going to do with them.
And yeah, that was a great book when you introduced her, and you've used her.
I could have killed her at the end of it. I didn't have the heart.
I know. I'm glad you didn't, and I'm glad you kept her, as you have.
I lost audio. I've lost audio.
Yikes.
Hello?
Hey, Brad, this is Chris just checking in real quick. So Antonio's audio has been lost, just to let the audience know. I'm going to try and re-invite Antonio up on screen. So everybody just hang tight. And Antonio, if you can hear this, just go ahead and re-accept your invitation, okay? Stand by.
I agree with John K. Damn Chinese hacked it. And I am flying solo. My computer sounds like it's about to take off. Maybe what happened is his overheated. I'm going to answer Danielle Bartlett's question, which was, when writing a book, do you do an outline before writing out the details? No, I don't. I do what I call a framework. It's not a pure outline. I know the threat. I know the vector I'm going to go in. And before One Rough Man or All Necessary Force, I would have said I knew the ending 100% of the time. Now it's probably 80% of the time I can figure out the ending. Sometimes it changes, but I don't do an outline per se. Do I still make it out to the shooting range? Not nearly as much as I should. COVID has caused a problem with that too. Now you go out there, you got to have all kinds of different things you're doing. And actually the worst part about this entire thing is everybody's bought all the ammo. There's no ammo left. I don't have any ammo anywhere. Antonio Morris says, I'm here. Yes, I'm working on a new gun build right now. In fact, for Christmas, I got a bunch of components for it. I'm still waiting on the ATF to give me the clearance. It's a suppressed upper 300 blackout. I've got the lower built. I've got the trigger system, got the butt, and waiting on the ATF. I got scope rings and a flashlight and a scope for Christmas, but I have nothing to put it on.
I'm back.
Bam!
It's the Chinese fault.
That's what I said.
I'm not hearing you well, Brad, but let's. I heard you were answering some questions, but see, we had talked about Veep. Let me see what else. Sorry, I was so desperately trying to get back in that I've lost the questions that were in here. When you're writing a book, do you outline before writing out the details?
I answered that one while you were off.
Oh, you did? Okay. Sorry about that. There was another one I saw that was good. Sorry, guys. This is one I wanted to answer. I don't know. Did you answer about what you read nonfiction? This is from Cherry G. Laska. And I know you've been writing on your website, you've been writing a blog occasionally where you write about certain topics that you're interested in. And this question is specifically about what do you read, nonfiction or fiction? And what are your best research and news sources?
I read both nonfiction and fiction. For fiction, I actually don't read my own genre. I actually read murder mysteries, kind of John Sanford, Robert Crace, that kind of thing. I read murder mystery.
Love Robert Crace.
Yeah. And as for nonfiction, it's basically something will pick my interest when I see it. And I have it feeds from all over the place that there'll be a book that I'm like, holy moly, I got to get that. And most of them are not things that you'd see on, Barnes and Noble. I get them from Princeton Press or something like that. Somebody will say, and it's kind of eclectic stuff, Pope wrote a book on suicide bombing and things like that, that I'm like, I want to read that and see what I can learn from what this guy's got to say. As far as news feeds, I get news feeds I have a very healthy, very, very healthy news feed every morning that I've cultivated, and I've slowly, surely whittled down to who I'm going to read and who I'm not.
Better sign up for my newsletter.
I should. Yeah.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, I get
newsandnews.com. Try it out, guys. My little plug here
news
tonight.
feeds from everywhere, and some of them are based on like AI monitors all Middle East stuff, and foreign policies, obviously foreign policy, and I get news feeds from all over the place, and a lot of them duplicate each other. You'll see the same stories here and there, but a lot of them don't. And so each morning I spend about 3 hours just going through the news, combing through the news, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in the world that doesn't make news feed of United States of America. You don't see it on the nightly news. You see it when you delve down into somebody who's in Central Africa looking at a problem set, and I'll see that story. And sometimes that'll spark the interest for a story of my own.
So we're at our past our drop dead time. So just one final question that a couple people are sort of addressing: Karen Lewis and Ed Goralik. I apologize if I butchered your last name. Or actually, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. A couple of other people, Terry and John and Melissa, are all asking about where's the locale of the next book. Can you let us know what that is going to be?
Yes, I can.
Is there any other sneak peek you can give us?
I'm figuring it out right now. So I was supposed to be in Croatia 2 weeks ago, but COVID destroyed that. So right now I've written a few chapters, and parts of it are in Zurich and parts of it are in Rome. Luckily, since I've been there, I can write that. And actually, parts of it are in Interlaken. There's a very cool death scene with a paraglider in Interlaken, Switzerland. But it's going to be Europe and Israel. Shoshana and Aaron are back, and it's going to be Europe and Israel.
Interlaken and Croatia and Israel, beautiful places to go. So that's one side benefit to what you're
Croatia.
doing.
I'm not putting Croatia in there because I'm going to Croatia. So that will be the next.
Croatia's spectacular. All right, so I guess that's all we've got. I do want to have Brad end up with some final comments on this, but for me, this was really a great pleasure. The book is terrific, guys. I promise you, if you're fans of Brad's, you will not be disappointed. And this was a lot of fun, Brad. I'll let you say goodbye to the crowd.
Thank you, Antonio. It's good to see you again. I mean, it's been years since.
But by the way, guys, the first thing he said when we did a rehearsal yesterday was, "Hey, you've really gotten gray."
That's the
I'm
truth.
not doing this tomorrow night, Brad.
When I saw him, I'm like, "Holy moly, he's gray!" Thank you very much for doing this, Antonio. I really appreciate it. And thank everybody for showing up. I hope you enjoyed it. And this is my first virtual book launch thing ever. COVID's kicking everybody's ass, including my wife, who's in bed right now with COVID. So thank you very much for showing up, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Have a good night.